speak a few words. I prepared myself to read some segments from my books. I read different books of mine and couldn't decide on what to read. I discovered by reading my newly printed books that the books are a very intimate exchange. The best setting for hearing my books is not for me to read them to a big crowd, but for individuals to get a book and read it. So today my books are displayed and we're going to distribute them. 5 books have been newly printed. You haven't seen them. We're going to distribute them today and ask for a $5 donation for each book. So our focus is on distributing the books, not collecting money. I decided not to read from my newly printed books. Some of them have free writing and stream of consciousness, which I like very much, but they cannot be accessible to everyone. The Danish writer Søren Kierkegaard used to dedicate his books to that individual who is my reader. So it's a very intimate exchange. What are these bells?
Different ringtones from Rush. Let's try cell phones off.
After I pass away, the best part of me will remain my books. I'm going to read from a few selections of my books for just a little while. This is from my autobiography, The Story of My Life, Volume 1. One day, while walking home from my welfare office job on 5th Street in Manhattan, I passed 2nd Avenue on my way to my apartment on Suffolk Street, just south of Houston Street. At the corner of 2nd Avenue and 1st Street, my eye caught the window of the storefront. It was a curiosity shop and featured the sale of little matchboxes, which had pictures on them from Hollywood movies. But now the window display is empty and the storefront vacant. They had gone out of business. There was a small piece of paper taped to the window with the following words, quote, "Classes in Bhagavad Gita, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 7 p.m. Transcendental sound vibration." I had read the Bhagavad Gita in the Mentor paperback edition, transmitted by Swami Nikalananda and Christopher Isherwood. And I was interested in the transcendental philosophy of the equal Atma, although I really couldn't understand it clearly. I decided to attend the class. That night, wearing black chino pants, dirty white sneakers, and a drab shirt, I entered the door of the storefront about 5 minutes to 7. There were about 5 men in their 20s, milling around or sitting on straw Chinese mats. A man with a ruddy-colored beard and curly hair approached me with a smile and greeted me. He introduced himself as Ray, and I told him I was Steve, and we shook hands. He asked me if this was the first time I attended the class, and I said yes. I asked what to expect. He said the Swami would come out at any minute, and he would explain everything. He would lead us in chanting, and then he would give a lecture. Within a couple of minutes, the Swami entered through the side door. He was a short, golden-hued monk from India. He slipped out of his pointy rubber shoes and walked over to a straw mat and sat facing the front door. The boys formed an audience facing him. He greeted a few of the boys who he already knew, and then handed out a few pairs of hand symbols. The symbols were strung together with cloth. He struck up a 1, 2, 3 beat. At first they couldn't catch the beat, but he stopped and deliberately began again, saying 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, until everyone was playing in unison, slowly. The Swami was wearing a saffron skirt-like robe around his waist, and a piece of saffron cloth draped over his bare chest and shoulders. His face was old, and his full mouth was turned down at the corners. His eyes were a deep, mystifying brown. His long earlobes reminded me of pictures of Lord Buddha. He was an extraordinary presence for the Lower East Side. He began singing prayers in Sanskrit. After a few moments, he changed to the chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. He indicated that we should follow his lead in chorus. Some of the boys had been there before. And they answered in chorus. The Swami kept leading the chanting for a full half hour. After a while, I became bored, but I kept going, and eventually entered into a trance-like stage. It was far out. I went past boredom and became absorbed in the sound vibration. He sped up the tempo near the end, and then stopped. He had a reel-to-reel recorder on his right, and he began lecturing. After reading a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, I found it difficult to follow his heavy Bengali accent and his insertion of Sanskrit verses. But I was fascinated with what I could back up. He was speaking of Krishna as the supreme truth and the need to become Krishna conscious. We who are living in the material world are all suffering from birth, death, disease, and old age. The great necessity to humankind was to take up bhakti, devotional service, and go back home, back to Godhead. Chanting the Hare Krishna mantra was the essential practice for approaching Krishna in this age. After lecturing half an hour, he asked for questions and spent 15 minutes answering them. Then he started up the chanting again and went for another half hour. I had the mantra almost memorized, and I was mesmerized. By the time it was over, I felt that I was high. I left the storefront and walked home chanting in my mind and feeling certain that I would continue to attend the meetings. I wanted to change my life and become pure. I have here the 5 books that were recently printed, and they're displayed on the book table here. you'll get a chance to go over to the book table and take some of the books and give me a little donation. This book is called Kaleidoscope. And it has stream of consciousness poetry. It has introductory essays by my collaborator, John Endler, who is going to make an announcement in a few minutes. His essays help the reader understand the poetry. This is a book called Seeking New Land, which is poetry and prose about a Swami and his assistant who opened up a preaching center in, of all places, Greenland.
Almost sold out.
This is a book I wrote in Ireland called Forgetting the Audience. It's written with an attempt to forget the audience and just write. This is my favorite book of the 5 new ones, Last Days of the Year. It was written in Ireland. It has short chapters titled Notes number 1, Notes number 2, etc. This is a book titled Compositions. It has poetry and prose. All right, I'll let my collaborator, John Endler, make an announcement.